Greg, welcome to episode 2 of Peeling Bitcoin. How are you?
Good. I'm very good. Sorry. How are you doing?
Well, I'm awesome. I am super stoked to be having you kind of talk about what you do, and specifically for Learn Me a Bitcoin. Learn Me a Bitcoin for me has been honestly like the unofficial Bitcoin documentation throughout my journey of learning Bitcoin and tinkering around with Bitcoin. So I am, when I messaged you, when you actually messaged me back, I was like more than surprised. But yeah, I guess, without further ado, can you give us a little introduction of yourself?
Yeah. So my name's Greg. I'm 37 now, and I'm from and live in the UK. I've ever since I was about 18 or very young, well, younger than that, I've enjoyed making websites. So when I was really young, I was first, if I go back quite early, well, actually no, yeah. So I've enjoyed making websites, and so about 2015. I started making Learn Me a Bitcoin, and it started out as just like a sort of, I want to explain how it works. And I've sort of ever since then been building on it and expanding it. And so it's kind of grown and grown over time. And so I'm still working on it now, just adding more technical stuff and more pages and stuff, trying to explain like as much as I can of how it all works. So yeah, but I have no sort of official training in Bitcoin or anything. Everything I've learned has been from just like coding around it and playing with it and trying to understand it through code mainly. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate what I said in the beginning, like Learn Me a Bitcoin, for anyone who doesn't know, Learn Me a Bitcoin is probably the best technical explainers and documentation for learning about Bitcoin, not only at a beginner level, but also at a deeper level than that too, almost at a level where okay, not only beginners can use it, but intermediate and advanced Bitcoiners can also use it for reference. And I still use it. And just seeing the journey and the development of how it looks like throughout the years has been awesome too. Right now, it's just the things that you can do on your website right now, it's like a Swiss Army knife for learning about Bitcoin. So before we get into the real nuts and bolts of Learn Me at Bitcoin and the website itself, tell us about the genesis story of how you started and why you wanted to build this site.
Yeah. So if I go back really far in time, when I first started making websites, one of the bigger ones I made at the very start was it was a poker strategy website called the Poker Bank. Because at the time I was about 18 and I was really interested in online poker at the time because it was a bit of a phase and everyone was playing online poker. And I thought it was really cool that you could sort of make money online. And then in between sort of playing poker, I thought, I've made websites in the past, like really basic, not very good ones. I thought, when I'm not playing poker online, I'll try making a website about poker. And I thought, well, what should I make it about? I'll make a poker strategy website, so explaining all the odds and mathematics and things like that and the rules and all that. So I started doing that, and I spent about 5-6 years doing that. And over time, as I was building the website, I realized I really enjoyed making websites and writing and explaining how things work. So I did that for quite a while. Then over time, I sort of fell out of love with online poker. I realized it wasn't sort of something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And then so I wasn't sure what to do then, really. But then I shortly found Bitcoin. Me and my brother were buying some goods online. And then when I first used it, I was like, this works really well. This is why does this actually work? Do you know what I mean? If it felt too good, why have we not had this before? So I started looking into it just to see if it was sort of real and it was as good as I thought it was from just using it. Yeah, so I think that was probably about 2013, 2014 sort of time. And then, yeah, over time, I think it was about 2015, then I thought got to start doing something now because I wasn't really working on the poker website anymore. And I thought I've got to do something useful. So I thought, well, I really like Bitcoin. This is really cool. I like making websites and I like trying to explain how things work. So I thought, let's have a go at trying to explain how Bitcoin works. I do the same thing I did for poker, but do it for Bitcoin. So, yeah, I think that was about 2015. And I probably didn't realize at the time that it was probably a lot more complicated than I anticipated. So yeah, in 2015, that's when I started on the very first part of the website, which is the beginner section. It's still there now. So yeah, I spent a long time researching. I knew quite a little bit of code, mostly through website sort of code, but not as low level code that you really need for understanding Bitcoin. But I still tried my best to figure it out at the time. So yeah, so I learned as much as I could through code and reading about it. And then when I felt like I got a good understanding of it, I started writing the beginner section. And I the beginner section now is still a bit different to the rest of the website because it's a bit more sort of light-hearted and hand-drawn. It's a different kind of section. Yeah, I wrote a lot of that when I was when I used to go out for walks a lot, and I sort of used to take some paper and I'd write it all on paper I think I spent about 6 months, well, over the course of 6 months, sort of writing it and then building the pages and stuff. Yeah, so that was the start of the website. And then ever since then, after doing the beginner section, I thought it was quite light. I thought I felt like it was a good introduction, but I wanted to explain more, like how does it actually really, really work when you get down to all the nuts and bolts of it. So that's when I started doing the technical section. Yeah. So, and then ever since then, really, I've just sort of been adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And so, yeah, I think the technical section really is sort of like the biggest section, the main part of the website, really, because it goes into all the detail, which is what I want to do, which is basically designed for anyone who's like maybe a developer and wants to work with Bitcoin. So, yeah, that's how it all started.
Maybe a bit later, you can share your screen and kind of give us some glimpse of the actual website. And maybe even if you have, do you have any older or the original code for the original website design? Maybe you can share that later. But before we get into that, actually, during that time, and I guess in the early years of Learn Me a Bitcoin, what were some of the Bitcoin educational resources that you relied on?
Massively Bitcoin Stack Exchange. That was tremendously helpful. By far and above, that was the people on, the developers on there are fantastic. You can ask any question, and I've always been blown away with like the depth of knowledge and like the readiness of the people on there to help you.
It's still around and it's still very active. And
yeah.
What's crazy is that like I use it. I also use it from time to time, and it's just so amazing that still to this day you can still ask the dumbest questions about Bitcoin, and Peter Willie or he will still respond to your dumb questions. It's amazing.
Yeah, and politely as well.
Exactly.
He's my top favorite developer. He's been fantastic. I look up to him quite a lot. I think he's fantastic, and he's helped me a lot as well. And he knows so much, and he's so helpful. He's been such a great service to Bitcoin, not just because of the code that he's written, but the help he's given on the Stack Exchange. Not just him, obviously, but he's been very, very good. But yeah, do you want me to cover some more other ones? So the Stack Exchange is the main one. There was, at the start. I don't think I read too many bips at the start. I don't think I needed to. The main resources would have been like Stack Exchange for asking questions, trying to find as much like code as I could that I could understand. Because I didn't understand C++. I'm still not great at it. But then I'd try and find like implementations of Bitcoin in other languages like PHP or Ruby that I could understand. So that gave me an idea of how it worked. And apart from that then, there was a really fantastic, I think it's still online now, resource called the Royal Fork blog. And there's only maybe 5 to 10 Bitcoin articles on there. But they sort of almost inspired me to do what I'm doing now, because it's very visual and really clearly written, and it goes into the technical details. And some of the pages I think still stand up to this day. I think it's called like the Royal Fork blog or something, and it's still online. But yeah, I think they cover like transactions and elliptic curves, a few other things like that. But yeah, that is really impressive, and it's a shame that didn't really carry on.
What about the Mastering Bitcoin by Bitcoin Jesus, aka Andreas Antonopoulos?
Oh yeah, that was really good as well. I think that was fantastic because it was the first book that I felt like brought Bitcoin all together into one single unit to explain it all in one, thing. Because otherwise you'd be jumping around to different websites, different resources, to try and piece it all together. But that was the first one that brought it all together into one manageable sort of resource. So yeah, that was I think I was like quite groundbreaking by Andreas to do that.
Yeah, there's also another book too that goes a bit more technical into the code. It's called Programming Bitcoin by Jimmy Song. That was a good one too.
Yeah, it was good. I didn't read that sort of like cover to cover like I did Mastering Bitcoin, but I've heard that it's very good, and I know people that have sort of read that and managed to understand and start developing with Bitcoin by reading that. So yeah.
Has there been any of like the notable Bitcoin influencers, either educators or other influencers, as we would call them now, have any of them ever, or who is the biggest one or the most notable one that has ever like kind of praised Learn Me a Bitcoin?
I don't know, not many really.
Not many. Man, no. I'm surprised.
No, I'm sure. I know. Yeah, I'm terrible at marketing. Yeah, I don't really sell the website. I just kind of just make it and just put it out there and just see what happens. But I think I don't know. Publicly. I don't know. Giacomo Zucco. Do you know? He said something nice to me once. But I mean, I don't. It'd be unfair to just go for the biggest influences,
Yeah,
because I've had so many kind words through email privately. Like, there's been fantastic that sort of kept me going. So
I can
um,
imagine.
yeah, but as far as like big influences, there must be something. I don't think
Michael
I can't
Saylor?
think.
No?
No, no, I don't. Sometimes I feel like it. No, it just doesn't. No, I've always get the feeling that like it's a bit underground, like learning me a Bitcoin. That it's not really mainstream so much. But I think I don't know why I never really promoted it or pushed it. But I think if you want to find it, you'll find it. And if you find it
Yeah, for
useful, you'll
sure.
find it useful. But it's there if you want it, basically. But it's not really sort of getting pushed at you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's one of those resources where like a lot of people have touched it and seen it, but like I said before, it's such a stable piece of resource that it doesn't need any marketing, basically. I mean,
Yeah, I love that.
it's basically it's really emblematic of like what everyone is doing in Bitcoin, right? Everything is just for like a public good for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's why I've always wanted to do is like it's meant to be like sort of something for the community, like, and everyone wanted to do this. I'm not selling anything. Do you know what I mean? I'm just sort of
yeah,
giving out free informations. Maybe if I was like making like selling something on it, I might push it more to try and make money. But I'm not like that's probably why I
curious
haven't.
though. You do leave a Bitcoin address at the bottom for donations.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
say how much you've received on that throughout the years?
Yeah, well, there's a running total on it.
It's the total. I guess you've never moved funds off of that address.
I have. Let me have a look now. See what it is. But I've had lots of kind donations. It's currently 223 donations. Last one
Nice.
was a couple of months ago. First one was 2018. I did actually have a different address before this, but I've changed it. I think between it was only online for a couple of years, but I don't think there's many donations on that. But yeah, the total is quite kind. It's just 1.44 BTC, which is very
Hey,
kind.
that's something for just a side project, a non-profit public good, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing as well because nobody's you don't get your name put on the website. It's just people just donating kindly, like without any sort of attribution
Yeah.
to their name or any kickback or anything. So
Yeah.
that's really kind. There was one large donation for one BTC, which makes up most of it. That was about a year or two ago, and that was whoever that was. Thank you.
Wait, one of the donations was just basically one Bitcoin. You're saying?
Yes.
Wow.
So that was very
That's
kind.
awesome.
So that's been really helpful for keeping the website going. And like all the server costs and all that.
For sure.
Yeah, but I just want to say thank you while I'm here with the donations. Like, thank you to everyone who's donated. It's amazing. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
All right. So let's get into some of the good stuff now. So maybe in the next part, at the same time, you can show around and show off the website and some of the components. And at the same time, if you can give us like an overview, like for a developer's point of view, right? For any developers that are also trying to push out any educational resources or website, give us like an overview of like the front end architecture of your website.
All right, so this is the current website. It's very, very simple. I've tried to make it as absolutely simple as I can. And as you can probably imagine, I'm not much of a front end developer. So that's why it has quite a basic design. But all it's really designed to do is just like show the content and all the pages and make it really as easy as possible to navigate around. So it's flexible as well, so it works on mobile. But I've tried to keep it as simple as possible. So front end wise, there's not really much. Most of it, the way it works, is like sort of back end based. So front end wise, I'm just using a CSS library called or framework called Tachyons, which was a precursor or was the first what's it called? It's like Tailwind, but it came before Tailwind, and I think it's what inspired Tailwind. But the reason I went with Tachyons is because it just doesn't have a build step compared to Tailwind. So I thought it was like just a simpler way of having a framework like Tachyons. What's it called? There's a word for it. Like we just, I don't know, but it's just like a sort of class based way of writing CSS, and it helps keep everything consistent. And so when you're writing, adding a new section like this, you just create the div or whatever, or the block quote, and then you add in the individual classes. And I just find that like a really, really fast way to make a web page. So every time I start a new page and I want to add like a new component or a new section, I don't have to worry about writing the CSS for it and having it being consistent with all the other, pages. I can just literally just use reuse classes to build, the new components, and it just feels really really fast way to develop, and gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility without the stress of having to flick between HTML and CSS. You just do it all in HTML. So I find that like a really fast way to develop. So I'm really glad I used that. Yeah, this is just for me on localhost. Apart from that, everything else is just sort of simple HTML and CSS. I try to avoid JavaScript as much as possible, mainly because I'm not very good at it. And I find it easier not to use it where I can. So these drop down boxes, they just use CSS.
Wow. Okay.
This, I think that's probably JavaScript, yeah. But yeah, so if I can use CSS, I will. That's my first choice because I just find it a lot faster. But where I can't use CSS, where it has to be more dynamic, I'll use for basically JavaScript stuff, like more dynamic stuff. I'll try and use a library where I can. And the main one I'm using for like pretty much everything is one called HTMX. And so that just basically allows you to sort of stick within HTML and then make, what's it called, AJAX requests, like send data out to another PHP file, and then it generates the HTML and then sends it back. So all the tools are using HTMX, like, basically like AJAX, that was called, AJAX requests.
Ajax,
So
yeah.
that's AJAX, yeah. So it's not really efficient. Like ideally, this would be in purely JavaScript. It'd be a lot faster and a lot simpler. Well, maybe not simpler, but a lot faster for like these small sort of tools. Because the problem with like using HTMX is like when I change this gets sent to the server, and then the server builds this fragment and then sends the whole thing back.
Gotcha.
So it works on my local computer. It's like as fast as JavaScript, but when you're viewing it online, if you're quite far away from the server, and the server's based in, I think it's in New York, you got that that ping sort of time, so it can be a bit sluggish depending on where you are. But if you're in the US, then it should be pretty quick.
And then to pause real quick right here, what was the rationale behind like not making the whole thing front end? I guess front end served, because it seemed like for the most part, like there was a front end and a back end kind of full stack architecture, and all of these different functionalities for hashing and deriving keys and elliptic curve mathematics. You're saying that's all being served from a server request, basically.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. So the reason I don't use front end, I feel like purely just because I'm not very good at JavaScript. I've always sort of made websites through PHP, and that's why when I first started, I started using PHP, and I was like, oh, this is great. This works really well. I can do anything with this and build, everything.
Gotcha.
So
and I guess for somebody who's not familiar with PHP too much, I mean, I've heard the memes out there. I think it was well known that the Silk Road website was made with PHP as well. So I guess is there anything advantageous that you think PHP still provides versus the current modern kind of like React framework front end development?
Yeah, PHP it just works, and I think it just seems to go hand in hand with like what I like to call sort of like web documents. So like when I'm creating a web page, and I want to add some sort of dynamic data into it, you can just, you write the sort of page in HTML, and then you can just slap in a little bit of PHP, and like boom, it's dynamic, and it's working. So it's like sort of sprinkling on sort of like dynamic content on top of like a HTML page, and I think that's what it's best suited to. I just think it's a really fast way to develop. I find it's easy. Like it gets hated on because it's not pretty and not the best looking language in the world, but I mean, it just works and it's fine. Like it's not not pretty, but then also you don't care. You can make it work. So yeah, I just find it a really fast way to develop, and it seems to go hand in hand with creating sort of web documents. Like they're sort of adding a bit of like dynamic stuff to it. So if I go to like the like chain reorganization page, I'm on the That's on the local site. So if I go on chain reorganization, so like yeah, so like I'll write the page, and then it's like, oh, by here I'll just add in some dynamic data. So this just gets pulled in via PHP, and it's just like a really quick, easy way to add some data to a web page. So yeah, I've always worked with PHP, and I find it easy to use. So I've just continued with that vein. I find it really simple and fast as well, and easy to manage. So yeah.
And then for those tools, such as hashing or generating a public key from a private key, or yeah, like the all of these different functionalities, is there a specific Bitcoin tool or API that you're using on the back end?
No, it's just a library I've written myself, because when I'm writing all the web pages, I'll code everything that I can so I understand it completely. So I'll end up writing a bunch of like either Ruby or PHP code. So I've got like a nice little script there, so I can break it down, and then I'll just create the tool then, and I'll use like I use either the same code or some other code I've written before. So it's all library based that I've got. I feel like it gives me a lot of control then, because I felt like if I was using a pre-existing library, I'd be sort of tied into their API and what I can show. So by having my own code and library, I can break it down and adjust it to show the exact data that I like. So for
I guess
example,
hence the reason why there's like most of your code snippets that you share on your pages are in Ruby.
yeah, like that was a bit of a weird choice. Yeah, so if I go sort of any page on here, what's bits maybe? Yeah, so a lot of the code examples, they're all in Ruby. But on the back end, it's all PHP. But when I'm learning, a lot of the time, it's a lot faster, because Ruby's a much nicer language to work with, especially when you're learning something, than PHP. So if I'm learning something, I'll tend to use Ruby first, just to be able to break it down and get it working, to see how how you get from A to B and connect all the dots. And when I've done that, then I'll move on, and then I'll rewrite it then in PHP. And even rewriting it sometimes gives me a better idea of how something works. Yeah, but then I'll use that PHP then, sort of like the power of the website. But I'll use the Ruby, as part of the examples, because it's much easier to read because it keeps out the way. It's not a lot of like syntax things to learn. I just find it more intuitive. So that's why all the code examples are in Ruby. But if I could do it over again, maybe Python would have been a better choice, because it's more common. But I just went with Ruby because that's what I liked at the time.
I mean, with all these code snippets, you could probably write your own Ruby-based Bitcoin library.
Yeah, I have got like a little one. I've never released it though. Like I've sort of made my own sort of little library of code that I use for myself. I've never released it because I don't. It's not really fully fledged, it's just for more my own learning purposes. Yeah, and I think it would be a lot of responsibility as well. But I've got a lot of responsibility at the moment with like, building the websites. But yeah, no, I have got quite a bit of code, and that's how I learn. It's through coding as much as I can around Bitcoin. Because when you code around it, then you can understand it. That's what I find anyway.
And then so it was, I think, about a year or 2 years ago when this new design came out. For the most part, for the longest time, this was not the design of Learn Me a Bitcoin. It was something else. Do you have the code to show what the pre-existing website looked like?
Yeah, this way I'll make it bigger.
Yes, this is it. Yep, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I've kept it. So yeah, this was actually the very first design. It didn't really change much from the start. So I think this was probably how it looked roughly in about 2015, 2016 time, up until about, I think it's 2024, about 2 years ago, when I changed to the new design. So this is how it looked. It was all right. I was happy with it. I thought this was like, like folder tabs and stuff, and you sort of go through that way. And it was like nice and simple, quite similar in simplicity to this. It's not too different. But the problem was like the way I coded it, I felt like I sort of coded myself into a bit of a corner, and sort of trying to add anything to the layout, or even making pages. I felt like I was a bit stuck. Yeah, if I sort of changed anything, I felt like it was going to break. So I didn't really want to mess around with it. So I had some ideas of things I wanted to do, but I felt like I couldn't do it. I was sort of boxing a little bit. So that's why I ended up redesigning it. But other reasons as well. Do you want to cover the other reasons why I redesigned it?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. So the main one was, like I said, was the layout was a bit stuck, and with the CSS, like it was every time I make a page, if I had like a little section and I wanted to move things around, I would use like pixels, and so there's no consistency
Mhm.
in spacing and colors either. So, and it's not too bad, but I wasn't happy with it. Um, yeah, so that was one of the main reasons. And then the second reason, from the way the website was generated, I had all these pages written in Markdown, uh, and then every time you loaded a page, it would grab that Markdown, convert it to HTML, and then serve it. So it wasn't terribly slow, but it was just really inefficient because every single page, even though they never changed, they were getting on the server converted from Markdown to HTML, which was like just a waste, and like it was taking up quite a few milliseconds of time every time you loaded a page. So I was unhappy with that. And then a second problem with that was like the fact that every time something, because the pages are in Markdown, I couldn't just easily slap in some PHP to make the pages dynamic. Because I can't remember how I did it, but there was some sort of like workarounds to make the pages dynamic, usually using some sort of JavaScript. But I just wanted to be able to get any page and add any text and code I wanted to for each individual page. But I couldn't, just because all the pages were sort of stuck in Markdown. So I wanted to get away from that. Um, and so then the third reason for the redesign is, well, the design. I thought while I'm making redesigning it and moving all the pages across, I might as well check all the content out and make sure it's good, and update it if it needs to be, and add in stuff that was missing. Because the way I sort of wrote this technical section, especially like the beginner section, I wrote from from the start to the bottom. But the technical section, I would just sort of like chopping away. I'd like write something here and then another thing here, and add these parts here, and like a bit ad hoc, adding in where I could. So it wasn't really as sort of like linear or fully fledged as I wanted it to be. Um, yeah. So what I wanted to do, I just wanted to sort of comb through it and just I either rewrite the pages so they were really good and add in the stuff that was missing, and that took the longest time. Then that took the whole redesign from like like a couple of months to like over a year, about a year and a half, because I was just rewriting everything. But yeah, so that was like why I redesigned the website. So if you look at all the pages here, they're quite different. There's a lot more now in this section now, because I added a
What
lot of.
goes, yeah,
Go on, go on. Yeah.
what goes into those diagrams that depict the sequence of different script opcode operations? Because those are really well drawn, I guess. It does a really good job of explaining the different, like how the actual script and the unlocking and locking script actually play out with one another.
Yeah, so like is that the animated ones or the
Yeah, the
or
animated
the
ones, or even just like the static ones.
okay. So I do all of my diagrams in a program called LibreOffice Draw. So that's that. So I'm making them all here, mainly because it's just easy to sort of like make connections between two different boxes like this, and when you move this around, that moves around with it, stuff like that. So I spend a lot of time making the diagrams in here, and I got a bit of a process with what font to use and what colors to use, and so I'll just reuse a lot of stuff when I'm making all the diagrams, and I try to keep them all in one single file as well, so I can easily make more when I need to. But for the animations like this, I'll just make all the individual slides, and then just put them into like there's another LibreOffice program. I think it's called I know it's like the presentation one, but you can just create a load of slides and then bring them all together to create create an animation. So it's all done in LibreOffice Draw, and this is just a GIF then, animated GIF.
It seems like a very manual process for the most part, but it's good. I guess the more manual it is, I guess the more precision you have in terms of how you want to depict it.
Yeah, you have complete control. But yeah, it's very labor intensive, especially if you sort of make a mistake and you have to like redo the whole thing. Like if you want to move something, you have to do every single slide over again. But if you have a good idea what you want, then I like the sort of control you have over it. But yeah, it is take quite a bit of time.
Is there any like code or like maybe anything you can show in terms of like the modularity of the different components and different pages?
Yeah. Okay. Right. I'll explain. So I think some people are going to be horrified about what I'm going to show here, but it's all very. When I went from the old website where it was like I had like, all the pages in Markdown, and I had like a single router, and all the requests went through this router, and they sort of grabbed the Markdown, brought all the page together.
Mm.
That seemed like the smart way to do everything. And I think that's how a lot of frameworks work. Just everything goes to the router, brings all the individual components together, builds it, presents it. But I didn't like how, I don't know, I felt like it felt a bit more complex than I wanted it to be. So when I went to this new design, I thought, all right, I want to make this as absolutely as simple as possible. Um, I didn't, just how can I make this page load in a way that makes sense to me, that's easy to work with, without caring what the best practices are or whatever. How can I make this simple? So what I've done is basically every page, every page has like an include at the top to include, the top part, and then every page has an include at the bottom, and then the contents then in the middle. So basically, yeah. So you have every page. Let's go to what's this? The change log. If I show you the, I don't think it's down there. Let me show you the change log. So all the content is just in the middle, and then you just have a head, including a head file at the top, and then a footer file at the bottom. So all of this sidebar and search bar is in the head file. This middle section is just, this middle part of the page. And then I have the footer then including everything after it. So what that means is every time I make a new page, I've got to include this head part and footer part, which, isn't really done, I don't think, these days. But it just means that all I got to do is like, it's still flexible, because every time I want to make a change to the layout, I just, replace the code in the head part, or the foot part. And then every page then is, unique. And then from here, I can just like any page. Let me see if I can edit it. I don't have to, I can just do whatever I want. I can say like, hello, Eric. This might look terrible now. But there it is. So,
Nice.
and so
Yeah.
that's what, all of this stuff, just goes around that, and I can put whatever I want in here. Then I can use any PHP I want, and every makes every page feel like fresh, and I'm not tied into like a framework or a system where I'm restricted in what I can and can't do. I mean, the only downside is like I've got these includes on every single page, but you can just use search and replace that. And if I need to change anything around here, for me, that is by far the simplest way to make a web page for me and make it dynamic, because I know where everything's being brought in from the head. I know what goes above the content and what's below it, and it's like a nice flow then of code. So I don't really get stuck. I don't know, like, where's this code coming from? Why is it there? Why is this happening now? So yeah, that's the sort of that's how every single page works, really. Just like a PHP include at the top, and then a PHP include at the bottom, and then
I'd
the
be curious
content
to
in the
see
middle.
how I'd be curious to see how the code looks like for one of those um interactive tools. So let's say, for example, the uh generating a dir signature or whatever.
Okay, yeah. Let's try and find something really simple to show you. Maybe the SHA-256 one. If I go.
Sure.
But they all use the same sort of structure, and they all use HTMX. So I don't know if I be able to explain it very well, but tools. What's a simple one? Where is it? SHA-256. Yeah, yeah. It's just two parts really. I'm using HTMX, and so let's get SHA-256. So yeah, every time you make a request here, this data gets sent to the SHA-256 file here, and then it will. And there's some stuff at the top. It's like a little class here. It'll just grab the data. So this will just get grabbed, and then I'll process it. I'll put do some checks and stuff. Check it, whatever, and then work out the results, and then store the results on a variable, and then and then you just got a HTML form then, and then it just populates the form. So again, it's very simple, very very linear. It's all one single file. Again, it's probably a horrific way to do it, but for me, it just makes sense because I can keep all the code in one place, and I can change it really easily. So yeah, so literally the request comes in, I grab it using PHP, manipulate it, build the result, and then construct uh, the form, and then put the data into the form and the results. And that's how they all work. This is a very simple example. When you get into like, say, what's a more complicated one? This one, this is very complicated, but like, that's maybe not a great example. I don't really use it very often. Schnorr, ACD, Schnorr sign. Like, for example, this one, you got multiple fields. Again, they'll just all these individual fields will get sent to a single, Schnorr sign.php file. I'll figure out which one of these boxes triggered the request, and then I'll work out the results from there. So yeah, this is, it's quite simple, but when you get into the bigger ones that have lots of different inputs and lots of different results, like this, working out all that. So but it works in the same way. It's just you got more data to handle, more checks to perform. The trickier ones tend to be what is it? Check someone. The ones that you can have like sort of an in and out. No, not that one. Yeah, like sort of this one. So you can either work this way, and it goes up this way, or you could clear that, or you can go from this one and then it populates down this way, going backwards and forwards. And they
This
make
one
it
I've
build
used
it.
often, actually.
Sorry.
This one I've used often.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, these ones are. I use these all the time as well. Really handy. I always try and make them like in a way that I'll find use. I do find useful. So if I'm trying to work in with some data, it's like, I need to convert this to something else, then I'll. They're useful for me. So I think if they're useful for me, they can be useful for other people as well. The only thing I'd say about this particular tool is because the way the tools work, they get sent to a server, and then the server's calculating the result and sending it back. There's nothing I can prove to you that I'm not storing the request you're making. So that's why I put these warnings here. But I can tell you I'm not, and I'm not. But you don't know that. So and I wouldn't want anyone to get in the habit of entering private keys and stuff into online tools, because that's going to be a very quick way to lose money. But so yeah, I should put that warning there. But yeah, no, I find them really useful myself. So I'm glad you find them useful too.
So actually, on that disclaimer, have you thought about open sourcing this project?
Oh yeah. So yeah. How do I explain this? I do have plans to at some point.
Would you find, or if I can just guess and speculate here, would you find that you rather not deal with like the bombardment of requests or PRs being opened or issues being opened?
Yeah.
Because it seems like for the most part, like as you've been kind of describing the architecture and design, it seems like a lot of every single component in detail is like you have a really good workflow of how you want to present it, the manual steps to it and everything. And it seems like if you do open source it, well, it'll just, your whole workflow would just be thrown into like, this more complicated kind of setup.
Yeah, absolutely. You've explained that better than I could have done. Yeah, that is absolutely, you hit the nail on the head there. Thank you. Yeah, it's just like I've set this up as like sort of like a one-man project in a way that I can work on it and develop it as fast as I can and as simply as I can. And I'm not really using any sort of like best practices for not that I'm doing anything unsafe or anything, but I haven't designed the website in a way that most people can work on it easily. So if I was to open source it, yeah, I feel like I would lose control in a way, because I feel like I'd have to make it more accessible for developers to work on. And I feel like I've still got a lot of things I want to add to the website. And I've plans for it, and I still want to. I feel like I've got a good momentum with how I work and how I can add things and build things. And I feel like the moment I would make it open source, I would get a lot of which would be good, which would be great feedback, but I think it'd be more than me that I could handle.
Mm.
And I wouldn't know how to sort of process it and deal with it or with what's best for the website. So it just feels a lot more lightweight and efficient for me to not make it open source at the moment. But if it gets to the stage where I don't see myself working on it anymore, and I feel like it's sort of done, or I move on, then I'd probably definitely consider it then yes. But it's, yeah, but no, but yeah, that's the main reason why. It's nothing against open source and nothing against me, sort of not wanting it to be open source. It's just the workflow. And I think I might be a bit too nice as well. Like if I had loads of requests come through, it'd be hard for me to say no. But when it's not open source, I can do what I want, and I enjoy that freedom for now.
Exactly. Fair enough. So on that note, and to kind of wrap it up too, anything on the development roadmap for the website that we can kind of expect, or anything like any new features, new functions, new pages?
At the moment, I'm just trying to add in a few pages that are missing, like check lock time verify, stuff like that. They're nothing major, and I haven't got any huge plans. I just want to keep it running. I just keep it running, make sure it's working well, fast. I've had a few problems with again, quite a few I think it's AI crawlers, and they crawl in the blockchain explorer, and so they're creating quite a few requests, and so I'm having to sort of fight them off a little bit to keep the website running. So if it does go down at the moment, it's probably because of that, but it's only temporary. But I'm trying to keep a handle on that. But apart from that, moving forward, I haven't got nothing huge at the moment. Anything you'd like to see or you find useful?
I guess, honestly, I think your website covers a lot of different topics. Maybe out of curiosity, do you plan on adding any, I mean, this might be a very cringy question, but like adding any kind of, lacing it up with any AI kind of chat features on it or something?
Ooh, good question. For this website, since, AI has been a thing, I've made a conscious decision not to use AI for like anything, because I feel like a lot of websites and content moving forward is always all going to be AI. So I feel like this could be like it's going to be, it's going to be big in AI. Even I use it all the time for like finding out information. So this could be like sort of like a relic of something that's not AI. So I don't want to use AI to generate any sort of content or images or anything like that. Or like, I suppose maybe a chat feature might be not so bad. Yeah, I'll have to have a think about it. But yeah, my general sort of stance on the whole AI thing with this website is like, just, don't use AI on this and just leave it sort of human made.
I would 100% agree. I think for those who are avid users of Learn Me a Bitcoin, one of the things that I appreciate is the voice that you express yourself in your writing. Like there's obviously a very intentional way of explaining sentences and writing stuff like that it makes it more human, right? There's a lot of components and a lot of snippets and phrases in your website that speaks human. And I think it gives this more personal kind of interaction with the learner themselves. So yeah, I'll backtrack on the question. Don't use AI. Actually, yeah. And there was actually one more question too that I wanted to ask.
Thanks for saying that, by the way. That was really kind of you to say that. Thank you. I'm glad that I didn't realize it's sort of like my sort of I had a bit of a voice with the writing.
Yeah, the personality. I like it. I've managed documentation before, and I've tried to stay away from using AI to write explainers and to put it in documentation. I think the documentation, any projects or any open source developer tools documentation should be able to exude who the brand is, who the voice is, who the people are behind that tool or that project. So I think, yeah, for those who are actually reading each one of your pages, you do a superb job of conveying that human touch from you. But yeah, the one last question that I want to ask that I should have asked earlier is, what was the hardest topic for you for you yourself to understand and then to regurgitate it in a more simpler way for the website?
This has been a really good question. I've got two in mind. I try to think what are the hardest. Like anything can be really hard, but then it gets simple when you figure it out. So you sort of when you figure it out, you sort of look back on it and go, oh, that makes sense. But sometimes it's hard to remember at the time, like how hard it was when you're trying to learn it. I would say, looking back, two ones for different reasons. One would be anything cryptography, purely because you're going into like a completely different subject. It's not just sort of computer science and programming anymore. You're going into sort of like number theory and mathematics. And like that's a completely different side subject. And in a way, you don't really need to know mathematics too much and number theory to understand Bitcoin, because you can just, as long as you understand like how public keys and private keys work, and not how they work, but like why they yeah, what they can be used for. The actual implementation of mathematics doesn't really matter so much. But like obviously, because I was making an explainer website, I wanted to understand for myself, the mathematics. So learning that was like, yeah, a completely sort of like different discipline. That took a long time. I tried to learn as much about like number theory as I could to help with my understanding about it. But yeah, so like with the ECS, elliptic curves, ECDSA, and Schnorr signatures, and then even like HD wallets and stuff, it's all really really clever. When you understand it a bit better, it's like, oh, that's genius, that's amazing. But I feel like you have to sort of go down a really far rabbit hole, get to the bottom, and then come back up again, like learning about like RSA and stuff like that, and other cryptography concepts and stuff. So it's not just something you can sort of quickly learn. I felt like I had to go down a really far, deep path and then come back to be able to explain it. So that was one that was hard. And then the second one, probably segregated witness stuff. I think because it was implemented as a soft fork, it felt like there was quite a few sort of workarounds that you had to understand, and a lot of different things changed. And it was sort of I found it hard to get a handle on, everything that had changed and how it sort of connected together. Because obviously it was written by people who understood the code really, really well. And when that sort of came out, it made me realize I didn't understand the code as well as they did. And so I was like, oh, why has that been done that way? And then, like things like, even now, I think probably one of the most complex things about Bitcoin is like, it's called, the nested sort of SegWit scripts. So like P2SH-P2SW, P2WSH. Like it's like sort of like a custom script within a custom script. Yeah. And it's like, oh, so that unlocks that, and then that unlocks that. It's just like, it's like, oh, okay. And it feels like, oh, at the time I was like, is this really necessary? This seems like more complicated than it needs to be. So I was sort of put off a bit. But it makes sense why they did it. I couldn't understand why it was done. But at the time when I was learning, it was like, oh, this seems needlessly complex. Can this be done a lot simpler? But I think it's just because the way it was implemented as a soft fork had to be done that way. Yeah, but so yeah, basically say for different reasons. Yeah, cryptography just because it's a completely different subject, and SegWit just because it was the first time I felt like I was really walking uphill trying to figure it all out.
All right, well, hey, thanks again, Greg. It's been an honor and pleasure kind of picking your brain on how you build and are currently maintaining the website, Learn Me a Bitcoin. Just from, you showing the different architecture and different pages and components of the website itself. Yeah, it's been a good learning experience for not only me, but anyone else listening to this episode. And yeah, we'll have obviously Learn Me a Bitcoin and any of the developer tools that you mentioned. We'll have it linked in the description, and we'll have a link to your Twitter in the description too. And then, yeah, cool. Well, thanks again, Greg.
No, thank you very much. This has been fantastic. It's been great. Brilliant.